supposed to be a talk about open source contribution and growing community, and kind of the how does this even work anyways. So, kind of pulling the audience around here, how many of you are developers? Okay, nearly everybody. I see the kind of hand wiggle and that sort of thing. How many of you would say that you work mostly in back end? Okay, front end. Okay, a few, all right. How many of you have been working in open source? Okay, all right, we can work with that. How many of you have been working in open source for more than 10 years? Okay, oh, sweet, so we've got another projector. This may or may not work. So my initial focus around this is I am an open source community lead. My work is being able to grow and create community and to be able to make everything work around how exactly we come and work in Badass than anybody else around. And then you worked with other people around being able to make sure that they were the experts in their field and you were working around them and with them. Sound familiar? Mostly? We've now moved to a place where that individual effort is maybe not as where growth happens. Where growth happens these days is corporations. So there's a corporate side of open source. How many of you are working for companies that you feel are actively contributing to the space? Okay. Very few people feel like they are actually working in corporations that are contributing to the space. You're probably using open source, and you've probably run into this problem before. So my lots of things to get into today are the community side, why the communities want contributions, the corporate side, and why it wants to contribute, even though you may not necessarily see it. Who contributes and why? I have a numbered list about why contribution matters to all of these projects as well. I have a real-life example, but I may actually ask for your real-life examples because sometimes it's more fun to be able to see what you want. How projects change to affect and create contribution longer term. Inviting diverse contributors as a part of contributor growth, which is kind of, advanced open source. And where the state of project contribution can go from here. And we may end up with slides, and if we do so, I will certainly wander back and make sure we cover all of that. So why would you get involved as a corporation? If you've been in open source, it seems like a fairly easy question to be able to answer. I want to be able to contribute, and I want to be able to use open source because, in a lot of ways, it's cheaper. I realize that we talk about sharing, but software is really, really expensive to be able to develop. What would happen if you had to start over every single time from bare metal and recreate a distro every single time that you wanted to be able to do a project? No one would do that. We would be back in the dark ages of punch cards and paper. So we talk about it being sharing, but we also talk about it as a way to move all of our projects forward. And then the context that you have to understand around open source is that sometimes, well, okay, I'm going to tell you that story. I have to tell you this story. In a previous life, I did consulting. And that work was basically involved as a project manager. One of the things that I really loved doing was being able to talk about what a root cause analysis was. How many of you have run a root cause analysis? Okay, 2 people. 2 people who have gone through pain. So a root cause analysis is something very bad has happened over in a corner over there. In order to be able to figure out all of the nature of the bad, you have to be able to walk through a process that gets you towards being able to establish that one single cause that everything else happened from. The challenge with that is that you have to get people to admit to things that they don't necessarily want to admit. But by doing so, you also get the context of why you're working in this particular way. What happened to be able to cause that particular thing? So your context comes out of being able to create a root cause analysis. If you sit back and think about why in your corporation you're using open source, you get a chance to be able to have that context. One of the things that had happened as far as in some of those projects, this thing happened, we lost X amount of revenue, and these people want their Thanksgiving vacation back. We lost all of the entire Thanksgiving weekend. Being able to set down that particular context of why we were working this way was pretty valuable. So, in short, you can't solve the problem of open source without knowing why your context is there. So the real thing that I was going to talk to you today, and we might get a projector and then we're going to come back to slides, is something called the fork and forget. Yes! Success! Hey, and for the poor person coming behind me, they probably won't have this problem either. Hooray! So, I've gone over community side, corporate side, why they want contributions, who contributes and why. Numbered lists. A real life example, which we may cut. How projects change to affect and improve contribution, inviting diverse contribution as part of contributor growth, and where the state of project contribution can go from here. Again, I've covered this, but just bringing this back in. Talked about why to get involved, what your context is, and my favorite, the fork and forget, which I didn't realize was actually going to be the title of this talk, because how many of you know what this actually is? Have you experienced this? No one. Okay, this is lovely. And I have lost all my speaker notes from here, but they're all over here. So, the fork and forget. Let us say that you, as gigantic megacorp, are consuming, let's say, 3 different open source projects. And these projects are so much better than anything that you could write in-house. Now, there's every chance that any one of these projects could die in a tragic fire tomorrow, and you would be totally without any of these things. But somebody could be coming in and buying those particular companies, and the project could move in a way that you didn't necessarily intend. And the fork and forget is what happens when you start making little changes in those projects. You start bringing them over onto your side. And in your side of the house, you're like, oh, we're just going to change that one thing here, and that one thing here. And then you end up with 6 different changes that are well outside of the mainstream, and the project goes in an entirely different direction. Like when Oracle buys anything. You may, in fact, lose access to many things. The challenge with that is, what happens if you don't? What happens if you stay and you keep working on these projects, but your things are no longer included as part of where they're going from here? So this is a fun little rabbit hole to be able to get down, because how do you expect to be able to upgrade? How do you expect to be able to, incorporate any new changes? Let's say they come up with a new wonderful feature in a release. What do you do? So this is your fun rabbit hole that you've basically dropped yourself into as a corporation. Now, as an open source project, you want to be able to keep things moving forward. You want to be able to have new contributors. You want to be able to have all of these things come in and happen for your project. So the fork and forget is actually fairly dangerous for your open source project as well, because you have a large amount of contributors sitting out there that you don't even know about because it's totally silent. That is the other danger of the fork and forget. So, make sense? Have I lost anyone? Okay. Everyone's still with me. And we've got slides now, so you know where I'm going. The project wants people to be able to come in and contribute. But then the other challenge comes up. What happens if your project happens to be mostly hobbyists? Hey, we happen to like working on this one really deep, esoteric content management system. We don't really want to run it in production. We don't really care that much about people that are using this on a day in, day out. We just like building it. That's a perfectly fine thing, but when you've got corporations coming in and consuming it, you have to figure out what that day 2 upgrade looks like. Hey, we've built something. It's awesome. People want to use it. But what happens when they come and tell us that there's this heinous bug that comes back in and breaks everything? That's a conversation in the community that you need to have about whether or not you are professionals or hobbyists. Have you seen this conversation before? Yeah? It's a very complicated conversation because it involves your identity. It involves your identity as a community about how it is that you're working and what you're doing. So I talked about being able to do root cause analysis and being able to have that impact of the fork and forget. Let's say that the projects that you've just changed have release cycles of, I don't know, every 3 months. You know what I haven't talked about? Security. And this is my only really scary slide in here. Yeah. I haven't even mentioned any CVEs. I haven't even talked about what happens when Heartbleed comes out and everything that you've ever seen has been affected. So, in short, and I'm really sorry, but this is all a lot of work. The place where you get to with some of these things in the fork and forget is you have massive amounts of contributors sitting out there that you have no idea as a community exists. As a community, you want to be able to take these contributions, but you also want to be able to have it be mostly in line with where you were going in the first place. A project typically exists because people love to work on one particular thing. They were solving an issue. The corporation issue may be completely different at the same time. So, other benefit around this? To be able to go back and talk about why a corporation should be contributing, you now have a massive amount of people that you could hire. They could come and work for you. You could just say, hey, you maintainer in the community, hey, you want to come work for me? Because I'm using this project. And this project, I will pay you money to work on this thing that you previously did in your spare time. This is good and bad. One, because when you hire those people, they might not have time to be able to work on the really cool things over here because they're fixing all of the things that you just did. But it's kind of a bait and switch to get hired into as well. But on the other hand, you're getting a paycheck. So this is going to be a longer conversation. Other ways to be able to resolve this. I've outlined the problem for you, but what do you think? I see shrugs, I see handshakes. Yes. Sure, comments.
Work with the community.
Yes. Work with the community?
Yeah, from begin with.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not always possible. What happens if the community doesn't publish their roadmaps?
Well, then you try to form a community.
So you fork the different community in a different way.
You try to engage the community and try to move it in the right direction. Right?
So for the recording, the comment is try to engage the community and try to move it in a different direction.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Other comments? Yes?
Yeah, I think about one way, like some bounty source project, which I can pay, let's say, $1,000 for which
Okay. So for the recording, conversation is, what happens if you establish a bounty program? What happens if you set that up in terms of like, I have X amount of cash to be able to give you for like certain bugs. How long can you sustain that? Who knows? It's a good thought. Other things.
Sponsorship.
Sponsorship? So sponsorship of developers, sponsorship of features, sponsorship of pick a thing?
The developer's time, yeah, or just money.
Mm-hmm.
To set up a boundary program or just have contributors that can work on their consultants rate.
Mm-hmm.
That's one project.
So for the recording, sponsorship around being able to have developers' time, being able to have dedicated work around that. Yes, other thoughts? I have certainly, more ways to be able to talk about how to resolve this. But of course, I've lost my notes in here, so I now get to pick up. So the real-life stories. I have one, but I'm more interested in your real-life stories of where you've seen this happen. Has this happened on projects you've worked on? Has this happened to you as a developer?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah? What do you do?
There's OpenSSL wrapper for .NET, and it's open source.
Mm-hmm.
And we needed it to be tips to 140 offline. We paid huge amount of money for that open source to move forward and to do it for us. And then the version of .NET came out. So we didn't wish to pay the same amount of money again.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a huge problem for us.
Okay, let me see if I can summarize that for the recording. Being able to work with a project that has an OpenSSL wrapper, paying a fantastic amount of money to be able to have this upgraded for your use, and then the project moved out from under you, more or less. And did it feel like a gigantic waste of money, or did it feel like a learning experience amount of money? Okay. Both. Hard to tell. Okay. Yeah, so this has real impact. These pieces that we talk about as far as like the, again, the fork and forget, have real impact. And real business impact as well. Other real life stories.
I know a company that sponsored upgrading non-civics to .NET Core.
Okay.
But they are just let their own developers to work with their work plan to do that. So sponsorship, internal developers.
Yeah.
That worked. But they still have issues.
So yeah, back to that sponsorship issue of being able to say, okay, I can sponsor these particular developers working on this project, but it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah, and actually it looks like it's endless. And they now start getting further and further because Microsoft created help for all developers by releasing this .NET Core help out to the wild. And all those open source projects are affected by it.
Wow, okay. Is there currently a way to be able to have that conversation with the overall company that seems to be causing the issue?
Yeah, Microsoft was the issue all over to me.
But do you have pathways to communicate that back?
Yeah, it is, because Microsoft became more friendly, so they actually open sourced many of their own things, including .NET Framework.
Okay.
And we talk to them. Sometimes they listen.
We talk to them, sometimes they listen.
Yeah.
That is in some ways a very good approximation of this gigantic industry that we have. We talk to them and sometimes they listen.
Well, we do the same with our own users. Like, I'm a maintainer of Rest Shop. They talk to me sometimes they listen.
So as part of being a maintainer, how do you keep that balance between my users have a need for this or my project had a roadmap around this?
Well, it's a sense of urgency for certain things. Like again, .NET Core has a certain sense of urgency for being able to support it because more and more projects have a demand to do that. So I said this is priority number one. And because I was doing this alone, I would happily be able to accept contributions to some other projects if someone comes. And that's what I do. But there are a number of PRs are not that significant. So I do that most important work myself. And solving features that people want. I say, if you want this, just submit a PR.
Patches welcome.
Yeah, because otherwise you have to wait.
Okay.
And if there is a critical number of issues that are addressing the same thing, then I might take steps and contribute.
So it's being able to evaluate the
qualitative analysis, just see how many issues are there, how big impact this issue has on the community and on the user.
All right, this is telling me that maybe one of my next talks needs to be how to run a root cause analysis for a community, which might be dreadfully boring to everybody else, but I don't know, sometimes they're fun. They can be very exciting. And being able to actually identify what the impact is of not having those features versus having those features, and what that kind of trade-off would be. Okay. Yeah, I have, again, plenty of other stories around this, but I wanted to be able to hear your stories where this has happened to you. Unless we're sleepy, and that's fine too. Again, we've had some projector fun. So, sometimes you end up with possible contributors who have been working for a very long time in their own particular space. And when they want to be able to come back and contribute to your project, this can sometimes be very painful because it can highlight a bunch of other things. In the community that I work in most strongly, we've now gone back as part of these things to be able to revamp all of our structures when people want to be able to come in and contribute. The project evolves by being able to say, how many contributions can I take and what happens after I've taken them? As far as being able to get a very, very large patch set into the project that I'm working on most strongly right now. We've had to revamp our entire governance structure in order to be able to make this work. We've had to change all of our maintainer structure from a direct line of like this person owns that and that person's owns that into a maintenance and tiering structure. So you can have a maintainer and then a peer, and being able to change all of that. And this is, again, my slide up here is, this did not go easy, but it's because we realized as part of taking these contributions that so many other things needed to change as well. And on the corporate side, this is also challenging because they have to also say, yes, I'm going to contribute this, and then I'm going to be the maintainer for it. So the adaptation as a service part comes on both sides. It's a conversation that happens between both the community and the contributing organization. So, why is this even a thing? Your open source project makes something because software is expensive to produce and sharing it is much easier. Everything is much easier from there. This giant megacorp consumes this open source project. Your engineers improve it. This is perfect. Everything is wonderful. Open source project releases another version of, let's call it the new shiny. And this is a wonderful thing. You like all of the things about it, but the new shiny is incompatible because reasons. Everyone is sad. If the open source project can adapt and change to be able to contribute those new improvements back, Megacorp can get to upgrade the new shiny, and the new shiny version 2 also contains Megacorp's happy. I'm glossing over months and months of work in here as well, which I can see most people are like, yeah, this sounds like a lot of work. And everyone is happy until the next release cycle. So pieces I want to be able to talk about are also, if you can pay attention to this, it's not necessarily that scary. If you can use caution in being able to implement your changes, being able to look about why you're fixing things. Why are there pieces in there that maybe you should not be using? Are there pieces in there that maybe we are using this feature in an unintended way? Are we being particularly resourceful and we should be looking at something entirely different? So, the other pieces around this are, have you checked out the project roadmap? Do you know where they're going? Do you know why they exist as a project? Can you tell from their webpage if they're active? Can you tell from their GitHub who their main contributors are? Those are really valuable things for you as a corporation to know. So, the other pieces are, evaluate why you're using this particular project. Again, that resourcefulness. Are you using this in a way that they did not intend? If you're not aligned with the project roadmap, figure out how much trouble this might be for you down the road. And the challenge about open source is, it's free, but you're the developer now. That's the corporate side. And you should take good care of this. From the community side, I promised you a numbered list. 3 things. 1, 100% of open source projects want more contributions. 2, 100% of these open source projects want these contributions to be useful. 99% of these open source projects don't have time to be able to take all the contributions that they get. So from the community standpoint, publish your roadmaps. Publish your roadmaps to be able to make sure that people who are consuming your project understand where it is that they're going. And why this matters is because then you don't have the problem of being able to say, I might not necessarily be using this feature, but in the future, these things are going to come together, and I really like that. Or, oh my god, they're planning on doing that? No, 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 no. Publish your contribution guidelines for your community. Make sure that people know what it is to be a contributor to your organization. That you know what your standards are. What's your style guide? Do you have a coding standard? Make it easy for people to be able to find these things. Other pieces in community? Reward the people that review code, not just write it, because your reviews are in some ways where you end up in a bottleneck. If you have everybody writing code, but no one reviewing it, what do you think your project's patches are going to look like? And this goes for both sides. Testing, you should have it. And testing is a talk entirely of itself. And last piece around community, let people know what it is they can contribute. You can contribute code. That's perfectly acceptable. You want to be able to put in a feature? Awesome, we want that. But also let them know they can contribute community. If you can create a space for people to come and talk about how they're using the project, what it is that they're working on, why this matters. Being able to say, hey, I can host a meetup. That's just as valuable. And then being able to contribute culture. What makes someone want to come in and contribute to your project? What makes people feel welcome? What makes people feel included? And in short, both of these things are available for both corporate and community. If you have your established roadmaps, your ease of contributor pipeline, and your testing on the community side, On your corporate side, being able to say, we should work on continuous improvement in connection with community. That's the engagement part. And then testing, you should have it. So at this point, I kind of want to stop and hear from you, again, about what you've heard in this that maybe rings true, or what it is that connects. Or if I made you like just fall asleep entirely, which is also fine. Thoughts, comments? Yes?
How to deal with feature creep? I mean, I have a feature that is not useful for other users. If it will not be merged into the main project, I will have problems that you mentioned before.
Yeah. So feature creep. That in some ways feels like something that should be on its own branch of, hey, we maintain this, but quietly. Or, I maintain this.
It's the same project. The main project evolves what to do with my brand.
Yeah. Should I kill it? Should I make sure that this piece is actively marked deprecated because it's being replaced by something else? That requires a lot of communication, and unfortunately, like, your own project is the one to decide that. The challenge is when you're all in violent agreement that this thing should not exist anymore, and it continues on. And because no one actually says, this is deprecated in favor of this. And that requires stronger product leadership. Go ahead.
I might have a suggestion.
Yes.
Usually, if there is a need for extensions, that you can always trade or agree with the project that they have interfaces for that, and not necessarily have implementation or dumb implementation. Then you can write extension project. You maintain yourself, and this is like every project has, like, if there is a framework that's open source, they have adapters for any logging framework.
Right.
Or they have interface and you write your own adapter. If you're a logging service provider, it's your own interest to track users by providing an adapter for that logging framework, or for any framework that has interface for logging.
So for the recording, it's more like, how can you make your project more extensible rather than maintaining that as part of your main core?
Or create extensions for existing project and maintain it yourself.
Yeah. Other comments? Yes.
I have a suggestion from my experience is that there is some contribution which is like, as a maintainer you don't think it's valuable or needed for the project. It's better from the beginning just say thank you to the person and kindly close the pull request, because in the future it's possible that you will regret that, because you will be the person who will be responsible for maintaining that feature, which is not needed, which is not planned for the project, and it may be in future harder to remove.
So evaluating at the point of contribution whether or not this is something that you want to maintain longer term. Okay.
You can include this person that submits this feature as a maintainer for this particular feature.
If you contribute something, you become the maintainer.
Yeah, that's what I did in a couple of those, and I'm still the maintainer.
So the lessons that you have learned is, I contributed something, and then I became the maintainer for it.
You need to be ready to become a maintainer of that particular feature, or kind of indefinite amount of time.
Other comments? All right. Thank you very much. I can obviously take Q&A, but I tried to be able to work it into most of the presentation, even though, hey, look, we have plenty of time and everything is perfectly, happy to take more questions, happy to take questions off the record as well. All right, thank you. Oh.